Good morning, everyone, and welcome to session two of the Solid Edge webinar series presented by Design Fusion. Today, we'll be covering the Solid Edge sketching basics. And just a reminder, quick overview, this is a very rudimentary training designed for everyone who does not know Solid Edge. We're focusing primarily on managers and supervisors who wish to learn the basics. So they can understand not only what their staff is doing, but perhaps even go in and make some minor edits themselves. We're also focusing on new employees who are getting a first look at Solid Edge, or possibly even some prospects and any other interested individuals. I'd like to repeat that this does not replace the fundamental course. It's designed to introduce you to the capabilities of Solid Edge, and at the end of the course, students will know how to do some very basic tasks and will be better prepared for the self-training tutorials. Just a review of the schedule. Yesterday we did the Solid Edge interface. Today we'll be doing basic sketching. We'll be here again tomorrow and Thursday, and then we'll cover all next week. We won't be here this Friday. The initial schedule that went out showed Friday, but that's actually a statutory holiday, Good Friday, so we will not be here on that Friday. Again, we're going to be using PowerPoints with embedded demonstrations and videos. We will have a page at the end which shows you links to activities or tutorials to practice some of the stuff that you'll see and go in more in depth into it. There will also be a Q&A time at the end of each session. This will be for session-related questions only, so please save them until then. And we are recording this presentation for later broadcast. And if there's anyone out there who wants to try this at home but doesn't have Solid Edge, you can get a free trial. You can go to this link or just Google Solid Edge free trial and it'll take you to this page and fill in your information. Just a reminder, if they ask you if you're dealing with a reseller to enter in Design Fusion, it should minimize the amount of email that you get from Siemens. Okay, so the first thing we have to do before we get into sketching is look at reference planes. Reference planes, there's a base set of reference planes that are inside Solid Edge, and these are built into the system. The intersection point represents the 000 of the system. And for all intents purposes, reference planes are infinite, but we put these boundaries around them just for selection purposes and visualization purposes. The reference plane represents your drawing table. This is the plane that you're going to draw your sketch on. There's three types of reference planes in ordered. We will be focusing on order today. We'll talk more about synchronous reference planes when we do the synchronous section. The base reference planes, as I said, are your main planes. You cannot move them or delete them, but you can create both global planes and local reference planes. Global planes are created as independent planes, and they can be used in the system for various things. One of the popular uses for a global reference plane is if you need to create a plane to mirror about. Local reference planes are created every single time you make a feature. And the nice thing about local reference planes is they're actually hidden when you're not using them automatically. And inside Solid Edge, we have several ways to make reference planes. I'm going to go through a few of the most common ones, and you'll see what I'm referring to. So let's bring in our Solid Edge. Right now, I'm in the ordered part environment. And you'll remember yesterday how I set this up. You can, if you downloaded the activity, you will understand. So basically what I'm going to do here now is go in and start creating reference planes. First of all, here are our main reference planes or base reference planes. You can hide them and show them individually or as a group. And if I want to create something, let's say I want to create a sketch, anytime I pick a command, such as a sketch or an extrude, it's going to ask me to pick a reference plane. And there's the different types of reference planes that you can pick. For example, the most commonly used ones is coincident. I want to pick a coincident plane to here. And you'll notice that it actually gives me a top-down view for that plane so I can go in and start sketching. You'll notice that what it's actually done is created another plane on top of the base plane. We refer to this as our local reference plane here. So I can go in and I can create a shape. And when I come out of creating that shape and I go back to my modeling environment, you'll notice there's the local reference plane. As soon as I hit finish, it hides the local reference planes. If I need to edit this, if I go in and say, let's edit this profile, you'll see that it takes me right into the profile, but it shows the reference plane again. So this is what we refer to as a local reference plane. Now let's undo this for a second and let's just go in and I'm going to just create a quick shape here just to give me something to work off of. And tomorrow we'll be teaching you how to do these ordered shapes here. And we'll just go in and create a quick symmetric cube here. And we'll hit finish. And for clarity's sake, I'm just going to hide the base reference planes. So let's say we wanted to create a sketch on top of this shape here. We could go in and select the coincident plane to there. By selecting this plane, it'll give us a top-down view to start drawing on and puts in the local reference plane like so. I'm not going to actually create a sketch here. I just wanted to show you the reference planes. Now, a global reference plane, if I go in and say, let's create a global reference plane coincidence to this face here, you'll notice that it actually goes in and physically creates a plane that I can hide or show, but it's not embedded into any feature. It's a standalone plane. As I said, a lot of times we'll use these planes for uh, using it as a mirror plane, for example, or a positional plane, something that we want to keep relatively permanent and visible because we may be using it multiple times. Let's just clear that plane for a second here. Now let's go through some of the common methods of creating a plane. So for example, whether you do this locally or as a global plane, I'm going to show you probably the three most common planes. Of course, is the first one being coincident, meaning the same as this face or the same as wherever you're selecting. The other one is parallel. I want to be parallel to this face, and I want it to be a set distance, let's say 50, above the shape or below the face. So you can go above or below and click. Now anything I draw on here will be 50 millimeters above this shape. So that's a parallel reference plane. Another reference plane to look at here is the angled plane. I want to be angled. I want to have a plane coming off this face, and I want to have it angled off of this base here. And you can pick your orientation. So we'll just pick down here, and then you can enter in, I want to be 45 degrees this side or this side. Notice when I hit the enter key, it locks it to 45, but I still have to pick the side. And now if I draw a shape on this plane here, let's use a circle. that is now drawn 45 on the 45-degree plane. So that's a pretty simple introduction to reference planes. Keep in mind that reference planes are your drawing plane. And if you remember that, it's a lot easier to understand what's going on. So I showed you how to create the coincident, parallel, and angled. We have perpendicular. We have coincident by axis where you define your x-axis. We have plane normal to a curve, plane by 3 points, and feature plane. And if for local reference planes, you can say use the last plane that I used, or use the feature plane, which is the plane that this feature used. And of course, we have tangent plane. This was recently added, I believe, back in ST7. So I guess about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And so we do have other options. And again, yesterday I showed you how to use the help section, so you can do a deep dive into some of these options if you wish. So let's get into the sketching. And the sketching we're going to look at today is 2D sketching. 2D sketching, as I said, is restricted to working on a plane. Solid Edge does have 3D sketching in it, but we're not going to cover that today. Now, there are two, in the ordered paradigm, there are two types of drawings, if you will. One we refer to as a profile drawing, and the other is a sketch drawing. The difference being is where and when you choose to use them. A profile drawing is done inside of a feature. So you go select the feature such as an extrude, pick your plane, draw your profile, and leave, and then create the feature and then leave it, exit the feature, leaving it in the Pathfinder. And the profile is embedded into the actual feature. You can go back and edit it, make modifications, but it is part of the feature. So if you delete the feature, you also lose the profile. A sketch is something that you do up front or you do before you create a feature, and it'll be an independent entry into the Pathfinder. Now, the nice thing about sketches is you can create a very elaborate sketch and only use part of that sketch to make the shape. For example, with this sketch, I could go and use the outside to make the initial shape. I could use the inside circle to make a cutout. I could use the small circles to do holes. And then I could use the cross sections here to do the web network. And I could do them all individually based on a single sketch. People often ask me which should they use. It all depends on your personal preference. Often you'll mix these together and use both type of sketching. But it really doesn't matter which type of sketching you use, you're going to use the same sketch environment. If you choose to create a sketch first, you have to use the sketch command. The sketch command is very simple. It asks you to pick a reference plane, go in and create your lines, arcs, etc., draw your sketch, and then close it and hit finish. This will save a separate sketch feature, which you can access later with other feature commands. If you're not going to do a sketch, you're going to use the profile, you go and pick the command such as extrude, and then create your reference plane and draw your profile embedded into the extrude feature. And again, it doesn't matter which you use, both of them will take you into the same sketching environment and provide you with the same commands to create your 2D shape. Now, I'm going to go through just primarily the line command and use this to explain some of the sketching techniques. The line command is a default selection when you enter into the sketch environment in the ordered paradigm. And the line command allows you to go in and create a line chain or individual lines. You do have the option of drawing to scale, although being a sketcher, we tend not to do that. We draw a rough shape and then use geometric and dimensional constraints to get the scale size. The nice thing about the line command is it's actually got a built-in arc command. You'll notice on the command bar here, we have line and arc, even though it's a line command. Or I can use the hotkey A. So I can draw a line, hit the A key, and then go in and put me into an arc. As soon as I finish that arc, it automatically throws me back into the line. If I want another arc, I just hit the A again. So I can draw some fairly elaborate shapes just using the line command. Now, before I demo this, there's a few things you need to know. When you are creating the arc, you will see the intent zone come up here. The intent zone allows me to pick the quadrant that I want to draw through. And in doing such, it allows me to indicate my intention to the system. So if I'm drawing here and I come through this quadrant, I'm telling the system I want a tangent arc. If I go the opposite direction, I'm telling the system I want a reverse tangent arc. If I go left or right in this case, it's a perpendicular arc coming off of the point and going in whatever direction I wish. The other thing that is going on when you're sketching is the IntelliSketch. The IntelliSketch is launched. We have the group at the top with the most common ones and the complete listing by clicking on the little light bulb with the pencil here. These are telling the system what kind of key points or connection points or relationships we're looking for as we're drawing. I encourage you to make sure you keep the maintain relationship and relationship handles turned on when you're working with this. You can turn off the relationship handles, which we'll talk about in a minute, if they get in the way, but never turn off the maintain relationships. What this does, if this gets turned off, you lose the associativity between any of your constraints, which makes it a dumb drawer. I honestly don't know why we even have this button there anymore. It should always be turned on. So keep that turned on. Now, as I was saying with IntelliSketch, we'll be given indicators to let us know when we're close to that point. So if I'm drawing to an endpoint and I see this endpoint indicator, I click and I know it's going to snap to that endpoint. So for those old AutoCAD users, this is kind of like OSNAP, but what it does is allows me to recognize these key points and geometric relationships as I'm drawing rather than having to add them afterwards. So let's have a look at this. And we'll bring Solid Edge back up. And let's get out of this here. And we'll start from a clean slate. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick the sketch command. I'm going to go in and select the plane that I want to use, the coincident plane that I want to use to start drawing. And you'll notice as I select the line here, or I don't even have to select the line, it's pre-selected as the start point. And you'll also notice that my IntelliSketch is right here. I have these already turned on. If I want to adjust more, I go into the relationship tab of the IntelliSketch command, and here I can turn these on and off. And you can turn these on and off as many times as you want during your drawing. We'll start with the line, and you'll notice I put a line down here. And as I start drawing, you'll see a couple of things there. Number one is I have both an angle and a length box appear. I can actually type in a value into the length and hit tab. It moves me over to the angle, and I can enter a value or hit enter, and it'll draw that line at 0 degrees, 100 millimeters long. So if you're used to drawing to scale, you can continue to do so, or you can actually go in and simply draw by eye, and then just adjust this later, as we'll show you. Notice as I'm drawing this, when I get to this point, there's a little white, almost bar type icon that pops up beside the cursor. If I go down, it disappears. As I come back up, it says, okay, if you click now, this will be a horizontal line. So I click there, and let me just get out of here for a second. Notice it puts this little plus sign there. This is the handle. Whenever I see that, I know that this is either horizontally or vertically aligned. Horizontally in this case, obviously. So let me unclick this, and let's do another. Let me just grab another line command here, and now I'm going to go in. I'm going to draw another horizontal line. Now I'm going to hit my A key, or I could click on the R key. If I hit the A key, I can go up and it throws me into an arc. Notice as I move my cursor through the different quadrants here, I'm going to get different results. So do I want to be perpendicular coming off of it or tangent coming off of it? Okay, I'm going to click. It automatically throws me back into the line. Now look at the indicator beside the cursor there. That's telling me that if I click now, I'll be tangential to that arc that I just drew. Notice as I move this over, that tangential indicator disappears. Come back and I click, and it's put a handle here, a circle around that endpoint, indicating that I'm now tangent. I'm going to hit the A key again, throw in another arc. Notice how I can line up. We'll click back into the line, come across. I can go in and put another arc. And you can see, using just a single command, I can go in and draw this shape. Notice the handles that are left. Okay, so these are geometric constraints that I've placed that I don't have to go in and place later. Now, obviously we need a lot more work to get this to scale, and we're going to show you how to do that in just a second. But I just wanted to point out a couple more things about IntelliSketch. Let's pick another line command. Notice as I move across here, it's now snapping to the midpoint. So I click, and I go down here, and there's another midpoint. Or I can go over here to this midpoint. Notice if I don't pick on the midpoint, though, it's actually showing a little arrow pointing there. That means I'm going to be connected on that line, but not at a key point. So let's have a look at some of these handles now. Notice there's an X here. The X indicates that I'm connected to the line, but not at a key point. Let's see if we can find a, up here, notice I didn't get tangent just here, but I have a square. The square means that I'm connected at a key point. So I know these two endpoints are connected. If I highlight that, it highlights the parents of this relationship. Later, we'll show you how to fix this to make it tangent. And, you know, depending how you draw, you're going to get usually anywhere from 80 to 90% of your geometric constraints placed using IntelliSketch. We'll show you in just a minute how to add other constraints here. One more thing here, let's go and draw another line. Notice as I pass over, I wake up the arc, it puts a plus sign in the middle there. I move over. If you don't see that indicator and you click, nothing, you're just clicking in space. You're drawing on the plane at that point. But if you see this indicator come up, I'm now drawing from the center of that arc, maybe to the center of this arc. If you're not getting the center point come up, just pass over the arc and it'll bring that point to you so you can actually draw from center to center. Okay, good. Let's close out of here. Remember, if you want to close something, you get out of the sketch. So to close the sketch, you hit the green check mark, and then you hit finish, and you're left with a sketch here. So let's close out of here. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. So again, there are the indicators. So you saw I would get center point indicator, point on element. There's my horizontal or vertical indicator, my endpoint, my midpoint, and there's several others here. There's the tangent. Whoop, can somebody mute their phone there? I'm getting feedback. Actually, let me mute all here. Okay, good. So there's the indicators there. This chart is available in our help section if you look under IntelliSketch, and you will find it there. Now inside sketching, we have numerous commands for drawing. A lot of these are on the pull down menus. So you can go, you can see how many different commands are in there. There's not much that I haven't been able to draw in Solid Edge. I'm hard pressed to even think of one thing that we can't draw in our sketch environment. You will notice that we do not have a pattern 2D command. For those people who are used to the 2D world, they like their circular and rectangular patterning command. We do tend to do that in 3D. If you're working in the free 2D draft, or if you're go over to the draft environment, you do have a pattern command in the 2D there, but in our modeling we don't, because we want to encourage people to pattern features as opposed to pattern 2D geometry. And the primary reason for that is if you pattern a feature, it's considerably lighter than patterning the 2D geometry and extruding multiple features. And when you're dealing with assemblies, the lighter the individual parts, obviously the lighter your assembly and the better behaved it will be when you're working with it if it doesn't have a lot of weight to it. And by terms of weight, we're talking memory weight. So there are various commands here. The exercises at the end will take you through a lot of these commands to allow you to experiment with them. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through every single one. I will show a few in the next demo that I do though. When you're inside of a sketch, you actually leave the part environment and go into the sketch environment. When you hit the green check mark to exit the sketch, you come out of the sketch environment, return to the part environment in the ordered. And if you want to make a change to that sketch, you have these two commands here. A lot of first-time users will go in and try to dimension a sketch without editing into it, and instead of clicking edit, they click on the sketch command. What you're doing is creating a secondary sketch. What you want to do is edit your primary sketch. You would select the sketch, and then you would either hit edit definition or edit profile, or click on the edit definition icon or the edit profile icon. What's the difference? Edit profile takes you back into the profile step in your sketch. Edit definition takes you into the sketch so you can change the reference plane or then edit into the profile. So if you're planning to change the profile, select here. If you want to change just the reference plane, select here. It's the best way to describe that. Now, as I was saying, we tend to sketch a shape. So inside of Solid Edge, the IntelliSketch will start to place these relationships for you. But this is the this is the group on the ribbon bar that allows me to go in and select the different relationships and apply them to my sketch if I haven't done so with IntelliSketch. And then because this is a parametric sketcher, you make sure that you go in and put in dimensions as well. Even if you've drawn something to scale, you want to put a dimension on it to lock it. So by placing a dimension on it, it holds that value and maintains that value and allows you to edit that value with control. So here's the most common relationships. For example, these two lines are collinear. Here we have connect. So this is connected at the endpoint. This is connected on the line, but not at a key point. These handles will be red inside of your system. I've got them green here just so they highlight. This is showing me that this is a horizontal line. This is showing me here that there's a horizontal relationship, or sorry, a vertical relationship between the center point and the end point here. We have horizontal relationships between these two center points, and we have a vertical relationship from center point to end point. This is showing me that these are concentric. The length of this line is equal to the length of that line. The length of this, or the diameter of this circle, is equal to the diameter of this circle. This is locked in space at the center point. And here's a locked, this is locked as horizontal, and this is just locked in space as well. Tangent, notice we don't have to be connecting to still be tangent. Tangent there, so that endpoint is tangent. That's an arc drawn in there. Perpendicular, parallel, and symmetric. So these are some of the handles there. Again, it's not all of them, but it's the most common ones, just to give you an idea of what kind of constraints we have. Along with the geometric constraints, we want to put in dimensions. Probably the most used dimension command is the smart dimension. It's used for dimensioning either a single element or placing a dimension between two elements. Let me emphasize the word element, not a key point. So if you want a distance from an endpoint to an endpoint, you would use either, instead of picking endpoints, you would pick the single line, and I would pick this line and it will give me endpoint to endpoint. Or I would say I want a distance, I would use a different command if I'm picking key points. I can also say two elements. I want a distance from this wall to this wall, and it'll put down the 50. I can also put in radial or diameter dimensions and radial dimensions. I can also do length dimension, this option here, or arc sweep dimensions. There are a lot of hotkeys that you can use inside of smart dimensioning. If you go into the help section on smart dimension, they have a table there of all the different hotkeys. This is a very flexible and powerful command, and I use this most of the time to do most of my dimensioning. We do have other dimension commands, especially if you're doing key point type dimensioning from endpoint to endpoint, this type of stuff. That tends to be an old AutoCAD trick of going from endpoint to endpoint. We tend to go from wall to wall, this type of stuff. We'll show you why in a minute. But the other commands are distance between. These can be chained or stacked. We have coordinate dimensions, so you pick your 0 point and then pick your other points to place the other dimension lines. Angle between, so I want to have an angle between this wall and this wall. Where you place your cursor is going to determine the angle. And then we have angular coordinate dimension as well. And again, there are other dimensioning commands, but these are the most common ones. So let's have a look at how we actually sketch inside of Solid Edge and place a constraints. Start with a brand new template, and I'm going to go in and select my sketch command. I'm going to pick my plane. This time I'll use the front plane, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to select my rectangle by center. I can pick any point and draw my rectangle off. A little trick here: if you hold down the shift key, it'll maintain a square or you can just let go of the shift key and create a rectangle. Now what I'll do is I'll start going in to create some other shapes here. For example, I want to apply a fillet to here. And I want to apply a fillet to here. I can go in and add circles. I want to place a hole, what will be a hole, at the center of that arc, and what will be a hole at the center of this arc. Maybe I want to place a hole at the midpoint. Notice how I move over, it highlights as midpoint. Okay. Some of our other commands we have, for example, our trim command. If I select the trim command, hold down the mouse button and drag it across the two, it'll trim all that up quite nicely, quite quickly. Now you can see that as I've been drawing this, it's put in some geometric relationships already. I may want to add some additional relationships. For example, I want to add an equality between this and this. I want this to be equal in size to that. I want this to be the same size as this. Notice how I'm doing this in pairs. If I highlight the pair, if I click on or highlight one, just hover over it, it highlights the other one on the opposite side so I can see the pairing. Let's add a few more qualities. Let's make this equal to this and this equal to this. I can even go in and say I want to align the center of this arc here with the endpoint of this line here. And it creates this horizontal alignment between those points. These are the kind of geometric relationships you can place. Now I can go in and I can use my smart dimensioning command. I want to put a dimension on here. And I want to place a dimension on this radius here. Now you can see in here, I can actually go in now and change these just by clicking on them and entering in a value, and it changes. It also changed that. If you're working drawing, in this case, I'm doing metric, you'll notice that by picking on my select tool, I can select. If you have trouble selecting things, you can use the select tool. But I'll click on here. Let's say, for example, I have an imperial value. I can type in 0.875 IN. So 875 space IN and hit enter. It automatically converts it to metric for me. Likewise, if you're in the imperial template, you can type in the value space MM and it'll convert it to imperial for you. Let's go in now and put in another dimension here. Using the smart dimension, again, I can go in and place in, let's make this 30. You'll see the shape start adjusting. Smart dimension, now even though I can't pick key points, it's smart enough to recognize that if I pick two circles, it's actually going to go in and go from the center of each circle. Okay, so I can go in and type in my value to get the spacing between the circle. Notice how these moved out because this was connected. The spacing is controlled by the connection between the arc and the circle. So the arc has to move out and everything goes along with it. Let's do key point here, or distance between. I want to go the distance between the center of this point and this wall. And here we can go in and enter our value. And now I can actually lock this down by creating a connection between the center point of this arc and the midpoint of these reference planes. The midpoint of these reference planes happens to be my 0 point. And you'll notice now that this has turned black. Black means fully constrained. If we go into our options, solid edge options color tab, you'll notice here that sketch relationship colors, fully defined or fully constrained, is black. By the way, if you don't like the colors or if you suffer from color blindness, you can adjust the colors in here. So we now have a fully constrained sketch. What does that mean? Some people think it means that it can't be changed. That's actually incorrect. It can be changed, but it's changed with constraints in mind. So it's an intelligent change. So for example, I know if I go and change this value to say 125, I can predict exactly what's going to happen. I know, for example, that it's going to get wider. The holes and the arcs will move outward, but this arc will stay the same. And as you can see, I go 125 and whoops, made it way too big. Let's just do that once. And I knew that that's exactly how that was going to change because I fully constrained it that it has to change that way. So this is what we call putting in your design intent into the sketch. And in the ordered, which dates back, this style of modeling dates back to the mid 80s when it was parametric modeling was introduced. This will drive, not only can you drive your sketch, but this will also drive your shape, as you'll see tomorrow. So now we have our finished sketch here. It's fully constrained. If you're working in here and you don't see the black color come up, then you expect it. Make sure you have your relationship colors turned on. Right underneath the IntelliSketch, you can turn that off if you don't want to see that, or you can turn it on. You can also go to the Inspect tab and see your relationship colors there. So now we're finished our sketch. We can go and either close the sketch up here or use this check mark. These two green check marks are the same, just in different locations. We'll close the sketch and hit finish. You'll notice that the dimensions and the handles disappear. If you ever want to edit those sketches, I'm just going to turn off the base reference planes for clarity. I can go and select either from here. I'll pick my select tool. I can select either here or up here, and notice these icons come up. If I say edit definition, it takes me back into the command as if I hadn't hit finished yet. So if I want to edit into the sketch now, I click the draw step, and I can now edit the values, for example, or I could add or remove. If you ever want to delete something, you simply highlight it and hit the delete key. So notice when I come out of the sketch, I'm back into here where I hit finish, and this is where edit definition will take you. If I click edit profile, I can actually right click and do edit definition and edit profile from here instead of using the icons. We hit edit profile, takes you directly into the edit your profile where you're drawing. So you can go in and make modifications at this time. So we'll close that and hit finish. So that's a real quick introduction to some sketching. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Some of the other capabilities that you have inside of sketching are listed here. We're just showing you the very tip of the iceberg. Actually, the tip of the iceberg, I would say. We can create dimension formulas and expression control. So I could have it in there that if this sketch is always going to be half the size of this sketch, or this circle is always going to be 2/3 the size of this circle. You can create variable tables and variable motors, so you can actually have you could have, for example, two lines that are opening and closing on each other. We have tools to help you constrain, including auto constrain. It's called the Relationship Assistant. We have auto dimensioning tools. You can set up grids and control the grid setup in your desired spacing and so forth. So if you're doing a plant layout, we can do a grid pattern. We can work with construction lines to help us control things. You can create planar curves. So if you want some B-spline style curves or best fit curves, you can do 2D import and export. So I can import AutoCAD drawings or export out to AutoCAD. We can do schematics. We even have engineering calculation tools, and there's a lot more. Here's an example from one of our plant layout demos. This is all done in 2D sketching, and we can get quite elaborate with the sketches. As a rule, sketches, when you're modeling, you try to keep it as simple as possible and use the modeling features to build the complexity into the model. However, if you do want to work primarily in 2D and then build models later off of the 2D, we can do that as well. It's a very powerful and flexible parametric sketcher. If you're just going to work in 2D, don't forget you can download the free 2D software, and you'll be working in our 2D environment, which is in the draft environment. So there's the links that I've put together for today. This is a using IntelliSketch activity that you can download. We also have applying sketch relationships is right here. These exercises are from the Learn page that I showed you yesterday. We also have the self-paced training. The sketch, this sketching course also includes the synchronous sketching, which we will be covering a little bit later on this week, or next week, I think. But the nice thing about whether you're working in synchronous or order, the drawing commands are all the same. So if you want to go in and I think the last half of the sketch course covers the ordered part, but these two are definitely in ordered. They're excellent practice activities. This one will introduce you to the variable table. This one here will introduce you to some of the constraints and do more of a deep dive into it. So it's really good practice. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel and our blog as well. For those of you who missed yesterday's session, we've reposted that. So let me just bring up our web page here, and I'll show you exactly where that is. So if you go into designfusion.com, and if you, hopefully you've all been here before. If not, please check it out. There's our blog, our training schedule. But if you click on COVID-19 response, here we have a, to get caught up, check out this link. And here we have posted yesterday's session. So please feel free to review this. We will try to get up each session in case you miss one. But in the event that we will get it up eventually, it just the way things are now, sometimes it takes a little extra effort and a little extra time. We have, like everybody else, we're all working from home, and sometimes our home internet isn't as reliable as our work internet. So I'm going to unmute everybody now, and if we have any questions, please feel free to ask. Again, for those of you who don't like to ask questions, feel free to send a question to support@designfusion.com.
Yes, I'll find that email if I haven't sent it.
Okay, you're unmuted now, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When you're doing your sketching and you're trying to get things constrained, constraints are something I typically struggle with. Is there a tool that you can go into and it can show you what's not constrained? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's called the relationship assistant. Let me just pull this over here and I'll show you where it is. Let's go back into the edit sketch.
And then it came up again the other day.
We're getting some feedback if somebody's talking with their thing unmuted. If you're not asking questions, just either please be quiet or hit the mute button.
Okay. I want all my green.
Obviously not hearing me. Okay, so if I go back into this sketch here
Mhm.
and let's edit into the profile. I'm going to go and delete this here. And I'll just move, I'll grab this whole sketch here and just move it away. And just to show you an example, I can go in here and say relationship assistant. And then I'm going to window this geometry. And I'm going to click on this command right here called relationship show variability. Now it's telling me that I'm missing two constraints. If I click here, notice I'm moving it. It's showing me how it can move. So the shape isn't changing. It's telling me I have to ground this. So I have to lock it in X and lock it in Y. So the quick way to do that, what I did is I just used the connect command here, which locked it both in X and Y in one step. So that's called the relationship assistant. Again, if you hover over here and press F1, it'll take you into there. And, we can see all the rules and that apply to it. The relationship constraint or assistant actually has some more information here. It's probably one of the greatest commands they ever put in, and it's been in there for years, and a lot of people aren't aware of it. The top half will do auto constraining. I tend to stay away from that. I just look for the relationship assistant here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a quick follow-up question.
Sure.
So that window that you have that's popped up there for the relationship assistant on the left-hand side of your screen, I'm not sure if you covered this yesterday. I apologize. How do you get that to show? Is that something that I can access and view?
Oh, this here? Yeah. It will show up as a toolbar as well. What I've done is I've set this up. And so just a reminder, yes, we did show this in yesterday. So if you watch yesterday's video, you'll see how I do it. In fact, you can download the exercise that shows you how to do this, but this is in your helpers tab. And normally this would be a horizontal toolbar. So if I apply this and say, okay, this would come up like this. So if I click here, I would see this. But as I was saying yesterday, for people who are training, I often find it's a lot easier to use the vertical window here. And then what I would do is I lock this by clicking here to lock it out. And then whenever I click on something, all the command options show up here with the text, so I don't have to learn all the icons until I'm comfortable with them. So this is my preference. If you review yesterday's session, it shows you how to do it. And there's also a download to download the actual activity that I give out in our fundamental course.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No? Well, that's perfect then. Again, feel free to send us any questions you have at support if you're a maintenance customer of ours. If you're not a maintenance customer of ours, you cannot contact your VAR, and if he doesn't have the answers for you, then maybe you should think about switching to us. But we'll help you out. Also, the next meeting, I think I got the date right this time. It's Wednesday, April 8th, so that's tomorrow at 10 a.m. We're going to go through basic ordered modeling, and if you want a link to all of the meetings, they can be found on our web page. And let me just bring that web page back up, and we'll go back into here. And since there's no more questions, I'm just going to show you this last thing before we break off. Again, go to the COVID response orange top there, and we'll have the meetings listed up here tomorrow. So if you or if you prefer to have a PDF sent to us, just email us again at at this email and request. I've instructed our guys on the tech line to send any requests for the meeting complete list to me with all the links, and I will forward you the PDF that has all the links on there. Okay, so hopefully we've taught you a few things. Go ahead and practice with these activities. I'll leave this page up for another minute or so, and if you need any assistance, contact us at support@designfusion.com. Again, my name's John Pearson, and I will be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. and we will do 3D ordered modeling. Thank you for attending and keep yourself safe.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye now.
Om du tar sitt an i det lag.